And this is something that is in our ancient history. There's many examples throughout time. Through meditation, sun gazing, and working with raw foods, I started to build the energy and electricity in my body. About 4.5, 5 years ago, I started to work with dry fasting and undertook a 4-day dry fast. And then after that, just transitioned to liquid diet only. Now it's one of the center points of my work and focus and thought, because this has been the most transformative health experience, holistic health experience I've come across. And it's like biohacking. It's like stacking a bunch of these things, like you were mentioning before: Qigong, meditation, sun gazing, grounding, proper diet, fasting. These things all just enhance our well-being, physical and mental. And so it just starts to snowball of its own accord, this cultivation of energy.
The power you seek lies within you, as we are each infinite beings living a human experience. The truth of who and what we are has been hidden from us until now. Awaken, my friends, to this new reality that we are in fact creating everything through the power and the gift of our wonderful imagination. Join me as I unlock the secrets of our past and reveal the truth that has been clouded in this veil we call life. What reality will you choose to create today? The choice is yours. Welcome, my friends, to my reality practice. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today on the Reality Practice Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Kramer, and today's guest is Jesse Boudreau. Jesse is a permaculture designer, a homesteader, and an herbalist living in northern New Mexico. He's a Taoist and a Buddhist and has been on the Pranic path for 4.5 years, where he transitioned from raw food and fasting to the liquidarian lifestyle. He now dry fasts 23 hours a day, juicing for only 1 hour. Jesse's path of prana incorporates grounding, sun gazing, Qigong, meditation, fasting, herbalism, and connecting with the 4 elements of earth: wind, fire, and water, daily. The practice of life, cultivating the life of people and plants is also a key part of his passion, profession, and philosophy. So without further delay, let's welcome my brother Jesse to the show. Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
Greetings, Joey. I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. I've been so excited and looking forward to this show. Literally, I think we scheduled it about a month ago, and it's just funny how synchronicities work and how things align, because a month ago when I wanted to have you on the show, I wanted to talk about, sun gazing, fasting, all the principles that now make up your life. But just in the last week, it's all come together, and I'm actually putting out, with my partner and me, we're putting out a masterclass next week on how to activate the pineal gland and how to detoxify the pineal gland. And it's amazing because literally everything you do correlates to that, cleansing, detoxing, sun gazing, meditation, Qigong, all of it. And it's like, that wasn't even planned when I first contacted you to have an interview, but it just kind of, I guess, subconsciously, it just brewed and that reality came into fruition. And it's like perfect timing to have you on the show, because now I get to learn from a true master, in my opinion, on how to do and live this lifestyle, this pranic lifestyle that you have made, your reality. I love it. And I want to introduce that to my viewers, the audience here at the Reality Practice Network. So let's get right into it. You said in your bio there that this pranic journey, it started 4.5 years ago. And I always have the belief that, nobody is ever born just awakened. Nobody, we have to go through these trials and tribulations, and there's usually that spark. Something happens to us at some point in time, be it a trauma or something really amazing, but something happens that tells us we need to go within. Like there's something more out there, and that spark starts to awaken us. How did your journey begin? Did it start 4.5 years ago, or was that kind of a building culmination to pursuing this pranic lifestyle? Like what was your journey like?
Yeah. Thank you for that. That it definitely has been. I feel like it's something that's been growing and building my entire life, particularly out of some, difficulty and trauma. I feel like I was first called to the herbs and herbalism when I was a young child, when I remember taking a walk with my dad, and, I was sleeping on his shoulders, and I woke up and he put me in this field of flowers, and I just realized, like, looked around and felt like, hey, I made it. I'm in heaven. And since then, it's been like a feeling that I've been pursuant of. And, in, I'd say, high school and my 17, 18 and moving on to my college years, I was starting to deal with depression, and I was starting to work with vision plants. And I found that that was my first, I'd, grown up in the church and stuff, but that was my first experiential sense of spirituality. And in college, I did what most people did, where I overstressed. I didn't sleep enough. I drank coffee and too much alcohol and ate terribly. And so I started to feel, pretty bad. And that was when I started to make some life changes with respect to diet. I was already a Buddhist by that point, just because I really, aligned with the philosophy, this naturalistic philosophy of everything having this potential, everything has intelligence, and this awakening, that I felt was like starting to happen for me. But I didn't stick with it, as usual with a lot of people. You kind of get pulled, back and forth as you're trying to integrate into the, overall social structure, and how to, make a profession out of your life and follow your heart.
On this show, we call that having to, being in the matrix. We're kind of trying to adjust to the perception of what we believe we're actually living in, so yeah, the matrix is what I like to refer to on the shows here. So yeah,
I think that's totally apropos, because it's like this contrived, social structure, technocracy, industrial hybrid that doesn't really honor natural human living. So, and that was something that had called to me from that time when I started to explore vision plants, hiking around outside and being barefoot in nature. I didn't even realize grounding was a thing back then. But, and then I became a young father, and, so these pressures were kept, coming in. And I was, doing permaculture already at that point, which we can talk about that, and what that is if you're interested. But just to keep on the storyline, and I was eating organic and everything, but it was standard American, a lot of wheat, meat, cheese, beer, and
you were doing a lot of things right, but not having the most effect, obviously, they could have.
Yeah. And so around 2011, I started having really terrible difficulty with gluten intolerances, dairy intolerances. I go to work, and I have a breakfast burrito, and I'd have to crash for 2 hours and, try to just tell my crew, I don't know, go dig that hole for that tree. And I'm just going to sit here and try to cope. So it was really starting to create dysfunction in my life. And around that time, I came across this guy, HRM, who was a sun gazer. He's an engineer from India, and they, had studied him. NASA had studied him, and he had underwent in an Indian hospital. I think it was like 412 days of observation where he didn't eat anything, and that's why NASA had this interest.
Is that the guy from the Man Who Eats the Sun documentary? Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
I have a question about that later. I was going to get into it with you. That is just mind-boggling in and of itself.
yeah, that we'll get into all this. It's a juicy, wonderful, fun thing to explore and experience. But and I started to meditate again, and I started to get into raw food at the suggestion of my wife and one of her friends, and I just had this amazing transformation. That I started to feel better than I'd ever felt in my life. I'd eat a meal and I'd be like giddy, like kind of high with happiness.
Mhm.
And so that was naturally transformative. And so similarly, like these things just started to grow in my life. My learning about herbalism, my stepfather when I was young was an amateur botanist, and I wasn't into it at the time. I wanted to be a pro skater or a musician or something.
Hmm.
And but I was getting all this botanical Latin, and then this health crisis came in. I started to need to work with raw foods, and at the same time, I was bringing in sun gazing and meditation to deal with the stresses of being a young father and trying to make my way, in my profession and with my family, all the challenges that there are in those things. And I started to hear about breatharians. And this is something that is in our ancient history. There's many, many examples throughout time of people who have been either through, spiritual like ecstasis or, spiritual practice, learn to release food. And so that interested me. I never thought I was really going there, but through meditation, sun gazing, and working with raw foods, I started to build the energy and electricity in my body. And I naturally at one point didn't feel to eat breakfast anymore. And then, so I moved to 2 meals a day of raw. I started to intentionally work with fasting and started to work with the epigenetics of starting to extend my fasts more and more. And then, and about 4.5, 5 years ago, I started to work with dry fasting and undertook a 4-day dry fast. And then after that, just transitioned to liquid diet only. And since then, it's just been progressing. And, I've been I worked with a breatharian teacher, Eli Tam El-Amin, who is one of the great teachers and breatharians of our day, who came and taught at our place where we hold classes for permaculture and herbalism and fasting. And he came and taught with me here in the desert, and I hung out with him for about 15 days, and he didn't eat anything or drink anything the whole time. He taught the whole time. We walked all around the desert, and he just filled me with, transmission about this lifestyle. So now it's one of the center points of my work and focus and thought, because this has been the most transformative health experience, holistic health experience I've, come across. And it's like biohacking. It's like stacking a bunch of these things, like you were mentioning before: Qigong, meditation, sun gazing, grounding, proper diet, fasting. These things all just enhance our well-being, physical and mental. And so it just starts to snowball of its own accord, this cultivation of energy and learning more about the science of our, quantum nature, so to speak, and, how we are electrical beings primarily. So that's as best I could do with the shorthand of
I
how this
love,
unfolded for me.
I love that the journey. I had so many similarities listening to you. You know, I'm not anywhere at the level you are and the different practices, but I found myself kind of following a similar path when it came to diet. And I gave up meats a couple years ago. I'm now back to eating them because I have no discipline. I love it. I need to eat less, but that's something I need to work on, obviously. But I did give up meat for gosh, like 6 months, a few years, 2, 3 years ago. And my body, like I have chronic shoulder injuries, pains, knee injuries from my past. So, I used to have a lot of joint issues. And then when I eliminated meat from my diet, it was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm 18 years old again. It was insane. And I know the benefits of doing it. And that's kind of that struggle that so many people have is it's like, I believe it tastes good. I'm conditioned to think it tastes good and makes me feel good. So I eat the meat. But at the end of the day, it's really just screwing us up. Like we have no, like we can barely understand how much damage it does. And, I think the science is getting out there now on it. But, the sun gazing, the eating, that was one that I agree. I find myself just progressively choosing to eat less often. It's like it doesn't, as I come into my own power, it's almost like it just no longer becomes necessary. And where I've never really been a huge breakfast person, but now I haven't eaten yet today, and it's almost 12:30 where I'm at, and I'm good. It's like I typically go till 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon before I finally eat a meal. So I try to keep it most days, 16, 18 hours of fasting. And I don't even think about it. It's just, and when I eat now, my meals are so much less. And it's like, other than I can't explain it other than I guess, energetically I'm changing my DNA, my body, everything is adapting to these new energies coming in to the earth. And I think you're right. We're getting all the nutrients we need, literally from the energy around us, the sun. I mean, you're corrected. We're all just energy. Like even the chair I'm sitting in and the desk I'm sitting at, it appears to be solid, but it's actually vibrating little molecules, vibrating in energy. Everything's alive. It's all moving. We just perceive it to be hard. So I love where you come from on this idea of energy and the concept of we are so much more than the food we eat. The juice diets, and I want to get into all this. I've done quite a few like 3-day cleanses on juice diets. I've wanted to do start with a 3-day fast, water only fast. And it's been one of those over the last year on my bucket list. So maybe you can give me and the listeners some advice on how to do that and prepare ourselves for it. So let's kind of jump into it some on the questions. I made a lot of notes here, and let's see. What do you think it was? You said about 2011, you started developing allergies and, food reactions. Do you think it had anything to do with, the Mayan prophecies of 2012? I know, and I think we're under the belief that around that time frame is when we shifted into this new energetic cycle, right? And I think the people that were more in tune or aligned with that energy, unbeknownst to us, it started to affect us, because I also had food allergies and, IBS, things like that have been spurring since that time frame. So I just wonder, what are your thoughts on it? Was it a shift in energy, and it was your body basically telling you to cleanse and like, you got to get this shit out?
Yeah, I totally think that. I think we're actually all moving to this way of living, to a pranic state where we're functioning at a higher level mentally and physically, that, psychic. If you look into the past, all the megalithic structures that have been built all over the earth, people want to say they were aliens or what have you. I think it was us, and that we're actually more advanced in our past And this has to do with, I study astrology too. And people talk about the Kali Yuga, sort of the dark age. And this is in our orbit in the galaxy. We have an elliptical orbit, and in the past we are closer to the galactic center, which is like the, super sun, and so the Kali Yuga was us all moving away from the galactic center. 2012 was coming back towards the galactic center, and a shift moving into those higher energies. And we're literally being washed now with basically streams of light and hydrogen, and that are waking up the planet. And literally the Schumann resonance, I don't know if you're familiar with the Schumann resonance, but it has been,
last week it was insane.
Yes, and this week too. And it had been for years. It was thought it was a base frequency of, I think it was 7.8. And yeah, in recent days it's spiked 80 hertz. So going from,
definitely felt it last week. I got my butt kicked.
Yeah, there's been solar flares. There's going to be more solar activity. All this stuff is, cosmic energy that is affecting us as electrical beings with an electromagnetic field. And it's part of the invisible universe. The electromagnetic spectrum is this great big old thing, and our visible bandwidth is this tiny little thing, So there's much more going on that we don't see than that we do see in terms of what is affecting our reality. And so I think this is going to continue. And this is why, if you look back to like the 80s or the 90s, how there wasn't very many people doing yoga, meditating, juicing, working with shamanic plants, working with crystals, now this is a very pop culture,
Right. It's becoming commonplace.
It's because, and it also coincides with the illness we've perpetrated on the earth and in our own bodies by, putting forth through an industrial revolution, tons of toxins into the environment, and as bioaccumulators at the top of the food chain, we absorb that more than any other organism. And sort of karmically, as beings of higher consciousness, it's sort of our responsibility, very much so our responsibility to take, I think that's our sort of ecological cosmic niche, is to be, caretakers and gardeners of this world. And that starts with our own selves. We're realizing that we can't, that whole thing of self-love and the importance of self-love. You can't really love someone else, be in your own integrity and share that unless you've developed it, and take that responsibility. And to be disciplined, become a disciple of your own self to get what you want.
Right. Self-mastery. That's what we're all learning the importance of, I think, on this journey here. It's like, wait a minute, you're telling me my subconscious mind is creating all of the chaos, all the bullshit. It's like, okay, I need to learn how to control that. I need to learn how to be in control of my mind, my body, my spirit. And I resonate so much with everything you say. I truly, I'm a firm believer in we're headed now to the galactic center. And, why was all this stuff spoke about and written about and prophesied about? Because it happens over and over and over again. They just know the cycle, and, it makes perfect sense to me as we're moving through the galaxy at millions of miles an hour. We're being bombarded with all different types of energies. And right now we're moving into this incredible energy that, from all I've heard, humanity doesn't need to do anything. There's people like us and the others like us that are learning everything about how to do this, because obviously we're going to have to teach this very soon, in the coming future. There's going to be so much new ways of thinking and living. So I think we're the ones that are helping to garner, bring this into light, more or less. But from what I've heard is nobody technically needs to do anything. This is all coming to us. It's all happening based on where we're traveling through the solar system, through the galaxy, and it's infecting our bodies. It's filling our bodies full of this energy. It's filling the earth, the plants, the animals, everything's feeling it. And we just have to basically embrace it and go with it. Stop fighting it. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. This is something, that, a sense of control. You were talking about learning to control this. The sense of control is the relinquishment of control, that to give over to the process and to give over to, your body and your conscious, your subconscious and your spirit is constantly giving you good information. How many times have you gone, I should have listened to myself,
Right.
And it's just learning to trust, once again, our own selves, because we've been inculcated, to trust the priest, the politician, the expert, but you're an expert always in how you feel and what is best for you. And that is your own, higher self guidance coming through. And it's always crystal clear. We just have muddled, it up with our minds a little bit and confuse things.
Right. Then that, I think that kind of leads right into the class I was talking about next week. I'll be teaching on is this pineal gland activation, or otherwise known as our third eye. Why is it this has been hidden from us? Why is it this has been purposefully, like they've purposefully tried to calcify and destroy our pineal gland, our third eye? What is so important about this little tiny rice-sized gland in our brain? Why does it appear that they've been purposefully trying to shut this down in our body, program it out of us? What do you think the reasons are there?
Well, your pineal gland is actually got this microcrystalline structure that's perfect for essentially wireless transmission and reception of information. So this information that's coming through, the planets and the galaxy and the light, our DNA is also a microcrystalline transmitter receiver. It's like a wave. It's shaped like a wave, just like light, and so if this is calcified in our circadian and shrunk, you were mentioning it's small. In sun gazers, they find like they measured HRMs, and his was as large as a golf ball.
Wow.
Because it's photoreceptive, and actually being in that full spectrum light is partly what stimulates it and awakens its ability. And this is actually your whole spine is you've heard of the Jedi, right? And the Jedi had lightsabers. This is actually something from ancient Egypt. There was something called the Jed, and this has to do. They, were essentially like Jedi adepts. Through working with vision plants and meditation and going through the right eye and left eye mystery schools of Egypt. Where you learned your feminine and masculine powers, essentially. You start to awaken this system, and the system is a transmitter of light and energy. And so your pineal gland is like this way to connect, like the Wi-Fi to the universe.
And I've heard it said that it's like an energy converter. It's the device in our head. It's literally taking in the sunlight, the energy, the lifeblood of everything living, right? It's taking that in and it's converting it from sunlight energy into the energy to run our souls, our spirits, to ignite everything, right?
Yeah, that word spirit has two connections etymologically. One is, well, there's two or three. One is breath, like to respirate, or when you stop respirating, you expire. It also connects with the word spiral and the word fire. There's it's not just the energy of the sun, it's energy of plants and other human beings. It's the energy of the earth, and it's ever present and all around us. And so, we eat food because it's been told to us that our body will create ATP out of that. I've been talking with a clinician researcher, and she says at very best, we get as much as 60% of our energy from food, but actually it's more like 1/3, and that most of it comes through this interaction with infrared and something called exclusion zone water, which is it's a fourth phase of water that exists in the body that's jelly crystalline, and on one side is this positive charge and the other side is a negative charge, and this is a battery. So they've polluted the waters, they polluted them with fluoride, they're destructured and denatured, but when you get waters from fruits or you work with hydrogen water, it ennobles this exclusion zone water to make a more effective. And if you're working out in the light, in the sun, getting out in the sunlight and grounding from the earth, you're creating more of this charge, this difference in charge between positive and negative, and moving into like the whole thing of diet and juicing and raw foods to alkalize the body. The deep side of alkalinity burns less than the shallow side of acidity. Most of our disease is inflammation, and this whole thing of being like a battery, you need this balance of alkalinity and acidity to have this electromagnetic flow. And that the negative ions that we bring into our body, this exclusion zone water and this balance of alkalinity and acidity creates this a better battery. And so that you need less food, and now they're talking about
we become more efficient. We no longer need to put in the inefficient foods that we've been told are good for us. And who's been telling us that? The people making money off the foods that we're putting in our body, right?
And the companies that make us sick, so that we can also, be sort of farmed by the, pharmaceutical industry, because if you're not in wellness, then you're moving into disease, and that is a whole lucrative field, right?
Right.
So
just keep putting a Band-Aid on it instead of going to the root cause and discover, there's so much money out there that we just waste and piss away, quite honestly. And it's like, if they just took a fraction of the actual money that's being wasted around the world and put it into the studies, in the research, but then we would learn of our true power and they would be useless and no longer needed, right?
Right. Well, that's where, and it's a good age to be in, where we can start to develop our abundance, independent, and start, I work with this company called Purium, where I share organic juice cleanses and things that are really powerful, where they do good regenerative agriculture. And there's a lot of people making very good money in this. And if we can empower ourselves, then we can make these transformations, start to think about how to redesign our cities to be more efficient, more biological, ecologically sound. I think we can create free systems of food. Looking at the victory gardens from the last World War and how they created community resilience. If we do that, we can sequester carbon. We can, get this more nutrient dense food. We can share it with our neighbors and create this community resilience. We're making habitat for pollinators, and we can be out in the sun, getting that electrical energy. We can be touching the ground, getting that energy, absorbing the microbiome through our skin that comes from the earth when we're working with the dirt. And all of this, the whole time, is ennobling us and empowering us. So that's you got me going on the vision of where I see we could take this,
I love that vision, because I have the same vision. I used to think back years ago, quacky hippie, oh, peace, love, all of this. And now I'm one of you, you, me. I mean, I'm one of them that I used to think that way. But, at the same time, I'm still an entrepreneur. It's still, oh, everything should be just perfect heaven, this and that. And I'm a realist. And it's like, I have so many visions of where you speak, like I'm aligned with you there. We're going to have this world that is going to be abundant, and we're not going to need the foods that we've been told were good for us. That medicine, the industry, pharmaceuticals will be dead and gone, because we'll reawaken to all of the natural, God-given, things that were created on this earth, literally to help us along and to heal us and to keep us living 800 years like we were intended to do, in the beginning. And I think now, honestly, with where we're headed, I truly believe, I just turned 43 this week, and like, there's no doubt in my mind, I will live to be at least 150 to 180. That's my mindset. That's what I tell myself. People laugh at me all the time, and I'm like, do you, whatever. I said, I'm going to live to 150, 180 at least, and that's just, I know that, and I don't have any fear about it. That's why I don't get sick. I haven't gotten sick, other than a cold, here and there. I haven't been sick in 25 years, because why? I tell myself I don't get sick. I truly believe it. I don't get sick. So, that mind's so powerful in what we believe and what we tell ourselves. I'm going to live to be 150. And it's through this stuff. It's through what you're learning and sharing with the world that
I'm shooting. Sorry to speak over you, but I'm shooting for 3,000.
Oh, man, you're shooting way high. And
if you're gonna hit the moon, you got to shoot for the stars. You know what I mean?
Right. And who says that isn't plausible? I have my own philosophies on it. You are a vision. You're not really here. I'm creating you out of my own mind, living in this matrix. Everybody in the world, let's say, that passes on, that dies, our loved ones, all of this stuff, it's only part of our movie. Who's to say our movie doesn't keep going and going and going and going, which it does, but as far as our mortal bodies, who's really to say that my experience and your experience individually, you won't live for 3,000 years? We just perceive it as we're going to die. It's all in the perception, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
I would say it's, you're right. It's that thing, from the alchemy of, it's either, neither, and both. And in the sense that your mind, as they say, energy flows where thought goes, and that this is like a quantum generator, reality generator. And so the things that we can lead ourselves to believe, conceive and believe, we can achieve. So that's a vital part, and that has been what's led me to be able to eat, just liquids 1 hour a day, is, seeing this, believing it, experiencing it. But then with respect to physical longevity, a lot of the things that we eat actually take more of our body's energy to break down than we get out of them. They leave residues, even minerals. Minerals are supposed to be good for the body, but too much accumulation of minerals starts to calcify and crystallize the kidneys and the fascia.
And synthetic minerals too. I've heard those are like the worst thing for us.
100%. And so it's this whole thing of learning to align with this potential that our body has, that we're really a gas electrical machine, that breath and the energies around us are the things that really give us life and this, spirit and energy. So it's like, being a Taoist, I think of, the whole thought of aligning with the Tao. There's the way of nature, and if we want this longevity, and that has to do with like our entrepreneurship too. Like, I'm also an entrepreneur, and I believe there's a whole potential for vast expansion and abundance for all through tapping into this, because nature, we forget that nature is where all of our economic abundance comes from, you know. And so if we act as, you know, in a feedback way into the system to, you know, create more feedback through our activity in terms of actively tending the earth and, you know, building businesses out of things that are going to be more aligned with that, like this company Purium. There's people that make, you know, millions of dollars doing it. And you look at, you know, right now they're talking about food shortages, they're talking about economic difficulties, you know, and there's people, you know, during like the Depression, for instance, that made millions, you know, and because they had that mindset and they had a plan and a thought about what to do about it. And they saw what was invaluable about what they were doing. And this is invaluable at this time. Health, you know, with the scandemic and all of that stuff, and, you know, the ecological, looming ecological crisis, the looming economic crisis, we can turn it around through our thought and activity and create heaven on earth, is what I like to chant, that this is actually a heaven realm, but, you know, we have to, and we're gods in this realm. So as we see it and perceive it in that way and conceive of it in that way and start to believe it, then we can actually have that experience versus this kind of hell on earth scenario that has been lining up, you know. And I feel like whenever that's happening, it's usually for this contrast for, you know, like in the terms of my own health crisis that showed up, the way it changed my health into, like, similarly, I have not been sick for decade plus, you know, because I started to believe and I started to align with the Tao and the nature of my body and the nature of nature. So I just don't get sick at all. I don't worry about being sick ever. And, you know, all the practices I do, you know, assure that. So, and no one can take it from me.
Right.
So,
right. So many truths in what you had to say there. I resonated completely with all of it. And, you know, we're definitely moving forward on this path, and we're learning how, what's right to put in our bodies, what makes us feel good, what gives us more energy. So let's kind of dive into some of these practices specifically that you've experimented with and now have become a lifestyle because they work. You know, let's talk about sun gazing. I learned about sun gazing from you, I think a year and a half ago or so. I think you were on the Quantum Healing Collective interview one day, and with Kyle and Leah over there. And yeah, I was just blown away by your story and talking about this. Tell us about sun gazing. How is it done? How do you do it properly? Because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Science, again, we've been programmed to believe that the sun is bad. Don't look at it. It'll hurt you. We need the sunscreen. I haven't worn sunscreen in 10 years. You know, it's like, I just give me it. And I don't get burned. So, I mean, it's, how important is the sun? How do we get our energy from it? Well, tell us all about this.
The sun is probably the single most important aspect of all of this. And, you know, to start with answering your question as to how to sun gaze, then we can move on to like all the benefits. But, you know, I want to be sure to hit this point, because if people are interested in this, I want them to do it safely. You know, I feel like it's a very, very safe thing beyond what I'm going to share. But so according to the HRM and his sun gazing practice, you do it the first hour, last hour a day when the sun rays are at an oblique angle. They hit the atmosphere at an oblique angle, so there's 0 UV. Right.
And I've heard is anything up to under 2 UV rating is perfectly safe, fine to look at, right?
Yeah, perfectly for all conditions. There are people, there's stories of like they tried in Vietnam to torture American soldiers by putting them in the sun and having them look at the sun all day long. And they found that their vision got better, their mental health got better, that, you know, it didn't work as a torture. It ended up being nothing but benefit, you know, and so, you know, the most dangerous time is when you're on water or on snow at high noon. then it's a good time to cover your eyes, you know.
Yes.
But that first hour or so of the day, and you can get little UV meters so that you can see what the UV is rated at. But you start with 10 seconds the first day, and then the next day you do 20 seconds, and then the third day you do 30 seconds, and you work it on all up to 45 minutes. And when I first did this at the top of the 45 minutes, I felt like I had a DMT, pineal gland experience of awakening, where I felt just completely connected to the whole universe. I could feel my fontanelle pulsing up here. And I, just felt essentially totally in love, just ensconced in love, and was love myself. And it was I put it up there with when my kids were born, my first psychedelic experiences, like a very connective, sort of tantric union with my wife. It was one of the most profound experiences of my life. But it's transformative in that way as well. But what it does is it stimulates the rods and cones in your eyes to process stress chemicals. It does a number of things. There's this whole idea of your eyes are windows to the soul. And it's like letting that sunlight energy into your body, and it kind of washes. I remember some of my first experiences sun gazing, looking at the sun, and I was like weeping. And I wasn't sad, but I was just tearing. And I had this sense of like, if you're ever with, maybe an uncle or your father who's coming at you in total love, and I felt like the sun was telling me, don't fool yourself, son, with misconceptions and lies and about yourself and doubt. And, I love you, and you're totally supported,
Right.
So,
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. But, it produces serotonin in the body. It's really great for well-being. And the sun has a resonant frequency with our own heart. It's like the heart of the solar system. All the planets revolve around it. And you start to feel this after a time, where your brain sort of shuts down and you move more into your heart and your heart field, because this emanation point of this electromagnetic dynamo. And in Chinese traditional medicine, they say the heart is the emperor, and they call your mind your heart mind, in that order, and that your true mind and your heart is 60% neural tissue at least. Your true mind is your heart. Your brain goes, should I, shouldn't I, good, bad, but when you know something in your heart, you know it without a doubt. And I think
Most
everyone
yes, I can feel that.
Yeah. So it's a way of reawakening the heart. It heals emotional pain. It stimulates the pineal gland, and it gives you energy. So
very cool. Yeah, I think, for a lot of people, possibly for me, I know when I first started doing it, in that 10 seconds, 20 seconds, you're staring at it, and in the back of your mind, you're like, is this really safe? You start to have those doubts at the beginning, like, am I going to go blind? And then after you take your eyes off 10, 20 seconds, you're looking and you literally are blind. It's so bright. You can't see anything for, it comes back, but it's that initial, it's like just getting over that fear, I think, of when you do it and you're in, like I said, your subconscious mind, it's like, oh my God, am I burning my retinas? And it's like, no, just go with it, trust it, and it all works out, right?
Yes. And you just reminded me another good point. It's good afterwards to turn away from the sun and palm your eyes. When I would do this, I would get all this geometry, fractal geometric thing, and sparks of spiraling light and stuff. And it's all stimulating your brain. So it's an actual physical thing that happens inside the body, but you also have sort of like these visualizations and intuitions that come in.
How
You know,
cool.
and I feel like the sun starting, you may have noticed this. I know it's been a case for me. Anything you start with a certain energy is how the whole, the rest of it, pans out. So when you start the day looking at the sun, you get the tone and frequency and vibration of that day. And it starts you on a good foot so that you go into the day kind of with the download of what the energy is of the day and how to deal with it in a positive way.
I love that. That's just good life advice right there. Start your day off positive, get that download of energy, first thing in the morning, and boom, the rest of your day. How can it go downhill from there?
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Talk about the other thing that is huge right now with you is your dry fasting and your liquid diet for 1 hour a day. How in the world are you going 23 hours a day? For most people hearing this, they're like, what do you mean you don't eat? And when you do, it's only 1 hour a day and it's juice. Like, how are you healthy? I've been programmed to believe that you can't be healthy doing that.
Not only healthy, but I feel, electrified and energetic. I'm, as I said, a permaculturalist and a gardener and landscaper. I spend all my days out there, wielding shovel and rock and, planting plants. And, it's heavy, hard work, but it's joyful and it's fun. And I have all the energy for all of it. And it's this whole thing of build, on the one hand, like we were saying before, what you can conceive and believe you can achieve. On the other hand, it's, epigenetics and just stretching this rubber band slowly, carefully. It's taken me, like I said, 12 years, thereabouts to come around to this lifestyle. So it's not something you can just jump right into, or you can hurt yourself, So first, to explain dry fasting is no food or water. And when a 24-hour dry fast is like a 2 to 3 day water fast, and it wrings out your interstitial waters at a deep level, gets into deep detoxification, cleans out the kidneys very deeply. And if you think about, if you studied any of Masaru Emoto, the man who was studying water and freezing it into crystals with different intentions and music.
That's just fascinating in and of itself. I love that documentary on that.
Yeah. And our bodies are made mostly of this water. Traumas that are stored in your interstitial water from your youth, things you thought about yourself or things said to you, toxicity, things like heavy metals, all this stuff gets into your deeper tissue, and this wrings it out of your body. So I first started working, the first time I did a dry fast, I think I did 16 hours. And then the next time I did 24. And the next time I did 32, and then 48, and I kept just opening this up more and more. And so after I had done 4 days of dry fasting, because that was enough for me to break the concept in my mind, because they had always told me 3 days, no food or water, you're dead.
Right.
And I was like, well, there you go, science.
Yeah, I just proved you wrong. What's possible?
Yeah. And I'd taken a lot of instruction online and through teachers, about how to transition to this. So after you have that initial sort of opening of your pranic engine, understanding that actually, 4 days have passed, I haven't had anything, and I still feel good, then it's about finding a way to keep this going consistently, something you can do easily. So you're not going to be able to just stop eating food or water. You'll die. There's something, if anyone's interested in this lifestyle, I highly suggest Hilton Hotima's Man's Higher Consciousness. Check out that book. And it goes into great detail about just the way he talks about the body's vital adjustment, and that for instance, an opium abuser or someone on pharmaceutical medicine, if you take away their medicine right away, they will die.
Hmm.
You know, you can't just cold turkey like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that makes total sense. Like with everything, what's happening with our DNA and the energies coming to us now, if they couldn't just pummel us with it all at once, or we'd probably die, radiation poisoning, whatever. So it's got to be just a slow, steady, we're getting stronger, we're absorbing more, we're learning the power of it. And so, yeah, like anything, it's just we need to gradually step up and create it, right? Work into it.
It's about that consistency, so if you're trying to wean someone off of opiates, for instance, you want to do it gently and you want to have something else to come in its place. Same with this breatharianism. You can't just stop food. You have to bring, your body still needs energy. So hence meditation, sun gazing, Qigong, these things are the breath will create this, will stimulate this, exclusion zone water, improving your waters, all these things, as you go back into the light and realize that you are a light being. We are all light beings. Even at just, the basic quantum level of understanding, like you said, all these molecules are just vibrating around. There's nothing actually solid here. It's the mind that makes them solid. So there's that vital adjustment, So after my 4 days of dry fasting, then I moved into liquidarianism, which is like the next phase. After, raw foods is a key part because it's about building, once again, the electricity in the body. Raw foods are biophotonic. So they have more electrical energy in them. They have this H3O2 water, which is hydrogen water that builds the exclusion zone water. They're dense with minerals and enzymes, so your body doesn't have to excrete enzymes to break them down, like you do with cooked food or, meats or things like this. Meat has biophotons too, but there's certain food, and I like to work with superfoods and herbs because they're more biophotonic, more electrically energetic, and it's about building this electricity in your body, So after, my years of raw foods, working with fasting, and then moving into liquidarianism, where I just allowed myself to have whatever liquids I wanted all day. And then I started to work dry fasting in like people do with intermittent fasting into my liquidarianism. So I go 16 to 18 hours dry and then just have, 6 or 8 hours where I'd allow myself whatever liquids I wanted. And
like
and
were those mostly all just plant-based, fruits, vegetables, all of all
fresh
natural
pressed
stuff
juices,
like that?
yeah, fresh pressed juices, tea, broths. I do a little bit of blended soups or blended juices.
Right. Okay.
Or smoothies, more like. At the beginning, if you're feeling like more, you'll want to make a smoothie or a blended soup. But
so a liquid diet, then switching to that, you can definitely do more blended soups and considered the same as a liquid diet, blended soups, smoothies, things like that, of that consistency. It's not just, when I've done it, it's always been just straight juiced, no pulp, no nothing. And that's what I've done 3-day stretches. But I was always kind of afraid of in bringing in the smoothies and blended soup type stuff, because it's like, well, is that technically a liquid? I didn't know. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, when I made this transition, I definitely had a mind to and a preference for things that were juiced and didn't have, the pulp and the more solid, aspects. But you have to follow your body's vital adjustment. And it's also your emotional body, and being attentive to, there's all these emotions that we have connected with food, from the past, all these, as you're detoxifying, emotions come up as well. And so, and your body has its wisdom. And so you want to listen to what your body is telling you. And if you're feeling like, oh, I'm feeling kind of like shaky and a little, off, then a blended something would be better, especially if you're talking about every day, it's different when you're doing just a cleanse for a while,
Yes. Yeah. You're going to experience some uncomfortableness, doing a 3-day, 5-day cleanse or something. I think that's just part of the process. But if you're making it more of a lifestyle, you got to gradually work your way into it. But our bodies give us signs. It tells us if something's off, if we're not, if we need to add something or remove something, it's always telling us. We just haven't ever known how to listen to it, I guess.
That's totally it, man. That's a huge piece of this whole path, is learning to listen to our body's wisdom and listen to our emotions and listen to our body is how we're going to grow in the light, and be more in balance and be more resilient.
I love that. We're at the top of the hour here. I want to ask a few more questions. I want to be respectful of your time, Jesse. Talk about grounding. Talk about what you do to ground, how that's positively affected you. You talk about how you connect with earth, wind, fire, water. You incorporate all these elements, and how has that played an impact in your evolution, your lifestyle now? Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. We're beings of earth, wind, fire, and water. And if, we want to put it in scientific terms, that's, solid, liquid, gas, and energy, right? Mm-hmm. So with the earth element, I'll just run through the elements real quick. Earth element is like those foods of the earth, the good foods of the earth that have, the mineral density and all of the, alkalizing components, the phytochemistry that's going to, give you the medicines you need. Mm-hmm. Also, physically grounding to the earth. I've been barefoot pretty much, I would say, like 90% of the time since, I guess it was like 2012-ish when I read about barefoot hiking.
Real quick, I got to ask on this. I want to hear all about it, but how do you operate a shovel barefoot?
Calluses.
Oh gosh. I mean, I've used shovels. I used to be in construction years ago, and I've dug many ditches, and I can't even imagine barefoot trying to dig with a shovel. But gosh, yeah, that's got to take some calluses and some time to build up to it for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing of it. The soles of our feet are very strong, and my soul still remains soft, but it's, I live in the desert. Like, there's all kinds of pokey things to step on, cactus and goat heads, and, and so I just built it slowly, just starting with barefoot hikes, and then starting to work in the garden barefoot when I didn't have a bunch of shoveling to do. And then experimenting with the shovel, with it, and it just starts to build. And I find I can do pretty much everything barefooted. There's some times where there's some like really rocky, nasty soil but when I'm working with that, I can use like a digging bar, or something like that to work through the soil, and then just dig it up with the shovel. So it actually leads to greater mindfulness too, because you're not just stomping around and smashing around because it hurts.
Right. You're almost walking more gingerly, as if you're being more gentle to the earth. I mean, in essence, I get what you're saying.
100%. And as a result, the thing with grounding is the earth is putting out negative ions all the time, and so your body absorbs them, and these are antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. So it's, that thing of like inflammation being the core of all disease, the more anti-inflammatory things we can bring into our body, and particularly electrical things, then it just serves to help our health. So the other benefit about being barefoot or working with the dirt with your hands, like I was mentioning earlier, is you absorb the microorganisms that make up our microbiome through your skin. So that's earth element.
I can relate to that real quick, specifically because of all the years I worked construction, in my 20s and whatnot, and just being in the dirt. I mean, I never washed my hands. I'm eating lunch after just being in the dirt all day, and I was absorbing all the micro enzymes, and I'm eating them, and I think that's really helped me with my immune system, and has built that up over the years, because it's not like I don't wash my hands after the bathroom. Don't get me wrong, I'm saying, but going out and being in the dirt and getting your hands dirty, it's like, I get you. I feel the power that comes from that, and it's so beneficial. We're putting all those enzymes in, and they're only helping our bodies, right?
Absolutely. Your microbiome is the core of one of the massive cores of your immunity. Your microbiome and your lymph system are the two most important parts of your immunity. More than that, though, too, with respect to like mental health, there's more neural connections in your gut than there is in your brain. And neurotransmitters are created by these microorganisms. So when we're taking antibiotics all the time, we're destroying this flora that enriches us, our immunity and our psychology. So you can heal that through those things, eating unwashed vegetables, straight off the tree, an apple, kind of a thing, or
organic. Let's make sure that's don't
absolutely
definitely wash the vegetables if you're getting them at a grocery store, because who knows how many people and everything's on that and touched them. So yeah.
And then you can create probiotic ferments through lactofermentation, things like sauerkraut, working with things like kefir or kombucha, and then there's some good probiotics that are out there in the world. The company I work with offers one that is particularly good because, like you're mentioning the chemicals, there's something called glyphosate. Are you familiar with glyphosate?
I've heard of it, but not in terms of its power. So yeah.
Glyphosate was Agent Orange. It was retooled from the war machine. They used Agent Orange to clear the jungles. So they would spray the stuff down and it would kill the microorganisms in the soil, and the jungles would die. Oh, wow. And that way they could find the VC, So they retooled it for the agricultural industry, particularly Monsanto, so he could have seeds as it was an herbicide, and he had seeds that were Roundup ready. That Roundup is what glyphosate is.
Okay.
The product.
So it's a bad thing, then.
Yeah. And then those plants are kept alive on chemicals. They don't have a microbiome that gets sprayed,
That makes sense. Yeah.
So, and the microbiome of the soil is the same microbiome that makes up our inner soil. So that's a key part of the earth element, taking care of your microbiome, physically grounding, and these good foods of the earth. Okay. The next element we'll say is wind, right? So wind is your breath, So now there's well-vetted science. There's 1 million practitioners and styles sharing the power of breath work and its transformative ability to heal mentally and physically the human body. So getting good air too. There's places where the air is better, like by the ocean or in the mountains or by a river, high in those, once again, negative ions that'll knock dust out of the air. And they say, like, I think just going outside, the air is something like 1,000 times better than it is inside.
Oh, wow.
Most of us spend most of our time inside. So
that's interesting. No, I didn't think about it being around water. I've got where we just moved to, we've got a creek, literally a nice, decent sized creek right in our backyard, just beyond the tree line. So it's it's a 2 minute and 1 minute walk for me to get to it. So I definitely can feel the air, like just sitting out back in the evening, 11, 12 o'clock and at the stars, and you can just feel the moisture in the air off that creek. And it's really invigorating and makes sense. It's you said less, it's gotten more negative ions. So yeah, it's keeping the dust down, everything. So that it makes total sense about water, in terms of airflow and stuff, breathability.
Yes. Yeah. It's just getting outside too, just like it's a huge one. Or even when it rains, you can tell how much better the air is after it rains, It's
clean and pure, right?
Yeah. And another thing people are starting to get more privy to now is nose breathing. How the mouth is meant for eating, the nose is meant for breathing, and you get nitric oxide when you breathe through your nose, which is kind of like nitrous for your car. It's like more power in that form of oxygen.
What are your thoughts? Let me ask on that. What are your thoughts on different nostril, in one side of the nostril, out the other, how does that play a role?
That's a yogic thing to do with the channels of, this electrical energy in the body. Same with the mudras, touching different, your fingers in different ways. This is creating a circuit, even like prayer hands, you're connecting your body in a circuit.
Right, because your right hand is the energy is going out, your giving hand, your left hand is your absorbing hand. So yeah, obviously when you connect them in any way, you're completing that circuit and basically rejuvenating yourself, right?
Yep, it's all just moving through you again. There's other things like touching the top of your tongue to the top, your tongue to the top of your roof of your mouth when you're meditating. That creates another circuit. So it's connecting these circuits and realizing they all connect with different organ systems, as the electricity flows through them, as well as with the breath. So
makes sense.
That kind of moves into the fire element of this thing of energy and electricity, and being in the sun, the importance of it for creating vitamin D, the importance of it, like we were talking about with sun gazing, all the benefits of sun gazing, the importance of it in creating these, connections, electrically in our body, realizing that this fire energy has to move through us. And then water, as we were speaking of before, Masaru Emoto and the thoughts of the, structured water, putting forth positive intentions to other human beings and toward yourself so that you're, being kind to your waters, working with the H3O2 that's in fruits and vegetables, or, there's like we sell hydrogen water, my wife and I, but there's also units you can buy. And it's a gas. It's, it's like you're just putting more hydrogen gas in there. But once again, it's anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. So being attentive to your waters and the water you drink, working with distilled water or spring water, there's different layers of water. Like you can have tap water, with chlorine and fluoride that calcifies your pineal gland and has, pharmaceuticals in it and, all this stuff and, on up. So each one of those is a path towards healing, and opening up in this greater way to our health potential mentally and physically.
Wow. So is that connecting those four then, is that basically the pranic lifestyle, which you consider, you classify as the pranic lifestyle, really incorporating all of those factors? And like you said, it involves your diet, the physical, what you put in, three-dimensional realm, the breathing, the energy work, the water. I mean, it's all, this makes so much sense to me, but it's so difficult, I think, for people to put their head around it. We're learning as we go here and seeing the benefits of it and the proof, but it's still so hard for a lot of people to incorporate all of those aspects. I mean, as long as we're trying to do one, parts of it, that's a great start. Wouldn't you agree? And
100%.
nobody's going to just jump right in and be perfect at this.
All this stuff is taken years and years to build. And if you can do any one of these things consistently, they'll help you. And, if you can do anything 30 to 90 days, you can entrain it as a lifestyle. So if you want to change your diet, that's a whole, discipline. Just work with the one thing, if you want to bring in, do it for 30 to 90 days until you feel like, yeah, this is just now habit now. It's like riding your bike. You don't have to think about it.
Right. I was told by my first mentor, the first 100 times we do anything, we're going to suck at it. So just embrace that, know it, and push through it. Right.
Yeah. And that's an important note. We need to create a culture of support toward each other around this. We're taught, through the school systems and everything that you're supposed to do everything perfect all the time and get straight A's. But a real learning environment and growth environment is where you're encouraged to mess up. You mess up a lot and you're encouraged, to keep going, I think to my skateboarding days where we would try a trick 100 times and fall on our faces. And your friend would be like, you almost got it that time. Go for it one more. And you hit it and they'd be like, yeah, that's a growth. That's a growth environment. And we can
absolutely what we need to foster more of. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And we could, this idea also in terms of like entrepreneurship and things like that, like people have misformed ideas. Like if that guy's making all the money, then he's taking it from me or from and that's not true.
Right.
It's all the resource and everything flows from you. So, and we can all grow in that in abundance, but we have to like bring on that, consciousness. So, but, just whether it's, grounding or meditation or, changing your diet or your entrepreneurial endeavors or, because you got to keep yourself going through this. And that's partly why, permaculture was a blessing for me. I started to see that everything that ancient people used to do all the time was an amazing health path,
I wish we had more time, to get into permaculture, all of the different, I mean, you're just so fascinating and you've got such a wealth of information that, can't possibly be dived into, and revealed just in an hour and 15 minutes. So definitely need to have you back on down the road and kind of go deeper into some other areas and philosophies and whatnot. We didn't even get on to the Taoism and Buddhism and aspects of just the way you live your life, and the principles of everything. So as we're wrapping up the show, I ask every guest that comes on one question. And since this show's about how we create our reality, I ask everybody, if I can snap my fingers right now, which I'm going to do in just a second, when I snap my fingers and you could instantly be transported into the ideal, perfect reality that you desire, dream of, heaven on earth, whatever it is, where would you go and why?
Well, I definitely would spend a lot more time in the tropics, as we were discussing before this show, in terms of my own personal heaven realm. But it's more than that for me, because I saw this long ago. It extends to we're all one here. If there's any other beings suffering here, then that contributes to my suffering. So I would
as
see
above, so below, as within, so without,
Yes, indeed. And so I would see my fellow brothers and sister human beings remembering themselves, remembering their power and potential, remembering that actually our essence is our heart and love, and that we can create that again in the world, that we would be in this connection with each other, with the plants, with the animals, and really enjoying this experience at a much higher level.
That's beautiful. I love I love the vision of where you're going. And if it's any consolation, my personal belief, we are approaching that time very quickly. Nothing can stop what's coming. and humanity is awakening. So I think you're living literally your ideal vision of life, of heaven. It's all coming, that we just can't control the divine timing of it. We gotta go through the steps and just allow it to become. So I think we're heading there faster than any of us actually realize. And before we look up, it's going to be an amazing time to be on. I mean, it's already an amazing time, but yeah, I think before we wake up or look up, it's going to be like, wow, how did we get here? And look what we have. It's going to be a blessed time for sure. Jesse, where can people find you? How can they work with you? How can they reach out if they're interested in any of your products that you work with? Please share everything. And I'll make sure to put links down in the description box below so you can reach out to Jesse, but kind of just share a little bit real quick on how people can contact you and find out more about what you do.
Well, you can go to my website, www.ziaenergeticsllc.com. And that's where, you can reach out to me through email, through that website, and you can see the classes we're offering and some of the products and stuff. You can also find me on Facebook. Just look for Jesse Boudreau, and I'm on Instagram, life_cultivationist. And, you just DM me. I'd be glad to help you with cleanses, herbal remedies, health coaching, anything like that. If you're looking to change, make a garden, or, I can direct you to resources, or teachers, or, offer some of the classes and stuff we have. So that's probably the easiest. You can also get me on Gmail, ziaenergeticsllc@gmail.com.
Fantastic. And, I consider you one of the foremost experts in this pranic lifestyle and herbalism. And 100%, guys, if you have any questions, if you're interested in learning more, reach out to Jesse. He is a wealth of knowledge, inspiration, wisdom. And it's been an honor having you on the show, my friend, my brother. Thank you. Thank you so much for introducing the audience to this whole lifestyle that's so unknown still. It's so misunderstood, and it's really a beautiful thing.
It's my absolute pleasure, Joey. I love this work. I love that I've been blessed. I'm humbled and honored to just be able to carry this torch and share it with the human family. I value every single one of you out there, and everyone has enormous, amazing potential. So let's tap it.
I agree with you again, 100%, my friend. So with that being said, thank you everyone for taking the time to watch today. Remember to give it a thumbs up, like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you never miss an episode. And remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today? Bye now. Hey everyone, it's Joey again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the show. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. We'd love to hear your comments too. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an episode from the Reality Practice Network. As I mentioned before the show, I wanted to extend an exclusive offer to you, the viewers of the Reality Practice Network. For all of you watching this video, you're undoubtedly experiencing an awakening and are searching for more explanation into the experiences you're having. Now is the time to explore who and what you truly are. For a limited time, you can now work one-on-one with your show host. Click the link in the description box below to start your journey, or learn more by going to myrealitypractice.com/ascension and let your ascension begin. And remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today?